Before I read you this story, I want to tell you why I wrote it. Last winter, my niece, she's 11, asked me why the ugly girl in fairy tales always has to be rescued before she's allowed to matter. I didn't have a good answer. I sat with that question for months. This story is the answer I wish I'd given her, that the girl in the woodshed was never ugly and was never waiting to be rescued. She was waiting to be unmuzzled. There is a difference, and the difference is the entire point. If you've ever been told you were too much or not enough by the same people on the same day, this one is for you. Press play, stay close. Elmira's been waiting. The blizzard had teeth. Elmira Gaier felt them sink through the burlap shift they'd forced her into, biting down to the marrow of her thin shoulders. Snow fell sideways across the obsidian throne's frozen courtyard, each flake catching the torchlight like a shard of broken glass before it struck her skin. She was barefoot. She had been barefoot for 3 hours. Her teeth would not stop chattering. Don't look up. Don't look at them. Don't give them the satisfaction. The mating auction of the northern packs happened once every 7 winters, and every unclaimed she-wolf between 18 and 25 was dragged to the courtyard whether she wished it or not. Elmira had prayed to be overlooked. She had smeared ash into her copper hair. She had bound her chest flat beneath the rough cloth. She had even let her stepmother carve a jagged line of charcoal down her left cheek to mimic a pox scar. It wasn't working well enough. The runt of House Gaier, the auctioneer bellowed, and the crowd of 2,000 wolves erupted in laughter so loud it shook snow from the rafters of the pack hall behind them. Motherless, wolfless, scentless, a bargain at half a copper. Scentless. The word struck harder than the cold. A shifter without a scent was a shifter without a wolf, and a shifter without a wolf was nothing, less than nothing, a ghost in her own skin. She had learned at 14 to pretend the emptiness inside her did not ache. She pretended now. Please, she whispered, and the word vanished into the wind before it reached anyone's ears. Please, just let it be quick. From the raised dais, her stepmother Ingrid smiled. It was the same smile Ingrid had worn the night Elmira's father died. Small, serene, victorious. Beside her, Elmira's stepsister Brielle lifted her chin and let her platinum hair catch the firelight. Brielle had been oiled in rose water. Brielle wore silver. Brielle would be bid on by princes. Elmira would be bid on by no one. Or worse, by someone. The auctioneer cracked his staff against the ice. First bid, who will take this creature off our hands? A farmhand, but perhaps a kennel keeper. Silence, then laughter again. A rotten apple sailed out of the crowd and struck Elmira squarely in the ribs. She did not flinch. She had been struck by worse things than fruit in her stepmother's house. And then the horns. 4 of them, low and long, pouring out across the valley like the throat of the mountain itself had opened to sing. The laughter died. Every wolf in the courtyard dropped to one knee so fast the snow hissed beneath them. Elmira did not kneel. Her knees had locked from the cold. The great iron gates groaned open, and through them rode 12 riders in black furs, their mounts' breath steaming like forge smoke in the torchlight. At their center rode a 13th, taller than the rest, broader, his obsidian crown dusted with frost, his eyes the color of a wolf's at the moment before a kill. Elmira Vornheim, the Alpha King. He had not attended a mating auction in 40 years. The entire courtyard held its breath. Brielle's hand flew to her throat. Ingrid's serene smile cracked at the edge. Elmira dismounted. His boots hit the ice. He did not look at the oiled daughters on the dais. He did not look at the lords bowing themselves half into the snow. He walked, slow, deliberate. Each step a drumbeat through the parting crowd, directly toward the auction block, directly toward Elmira. Her heart seized, her vision tunneled. He sees me. He sees me. Oh gods, don't see me. He stopped 3 paces from her, up close. He smelled of cedar smoke and winter iron and something deeper. something that made the empty place inside her chest give one strange, painful lurch, like a second heart trying to remember how to beat. He looked at her ash-smeared hair, her charcoaled cheek, her chattering teeth, her bare, blue-tinged feet. The crowd waited for him to laugh, to turn away, to choose Brielle. He did not. This one. His voice was not a shout. It was the low, grinding promise of a mountain deciding to fall. Every wolf in the courtyard shuddered. "My king," the auctioneer stammered, visibly sweating despite the cold. Surely you misunderstand. This is the scentless girl, the Gaier runt." Elmira's head turned, just slightly, just enough. "I said this one." A sound like splintering ice ran through the courtyard. Ingrid's face went the color of old milk. Brielle made a small, wounded noise, and Elmira, trembling, ash-streaked, barefoot Elmira, finally looked up into the eyes of the Alpha King and saw something there that made her empty chest ache for the second time in one night. He was looking at her like a man who had been searching for something for a very, very long time, and had just found it. They took her before she could speak. Two of the king's riders flanked her in an instant, black furs swallowing her on either side, and a heavy sable cloak, his cloak, still warm from his shoulders, still carrying that cedar and iron scent, dropped around her like a falling sky. The weight of it nearly buckled her knees. Wait, I haven't. My things. My sister. You have no sister. Elmira's voice, close to her ear now, low enough that only she could hear. Not anymore. Walk. She walked. The courtyard blurred. She caught only fragments as she passed. Ingrid's face carved open in silent fury. Brielle's mouth a perfect pink O of disbelief. The auctioneer clutching his staff like it might save him from a sovereign he had just insulted. The crowd of wolves parted like cut wheat. No one breathed. At the gates waited a carriage of black lacquered wood, drawn by 4 horses so dark they seemed cut from the blizzard itself. The door opened before a hand touched it. Elmira gestured her inside. She hesitated. "My king, I'm not pretty. I don't have a wolf. There's been some mistake." "There is no mistake." He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Get in the carriage. Elmira Gaier." He knew her name. She climbed inside. The interior was warmer than any room she had ever known. Sable furs lined every wall. A small iron brazier glowed in one corner, throwing copper light across the velvet cushions. She sank into the seat because her legs would no longer hold her. And when Elmira ducked through the door and settled across from her, the carriage seemed suddenly, impossibly, too small. The door sealed. The horses lurched forward. The wheels bit through snow. And then, for the first time in her life, Elmira Gaier was alone with a king. He did not speak. He watched her. Not the way the auctioneer had watched her, like a thing to be priced. Not the way Ingrid watched her, like a thing to be erased. He watched her the way a hunter watches a wounded deer he does not quite have the heart to finish. She dropped her eyes to her lap. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs to make them stop. They would not stop. "You are cold," he said. I'm fine. My king." "You are cold." He leaned forward, and before she could pull back, he had taken her right foot, her bare, blue, half-frozen foot, in both of his enormous hands. His palms were furnace hot. She made a small sound she did not mean to make. "Please, you don't have to. I'm not worth—" "Stop." The word was quiet. It cut her off more thoroughly than a shout could have. "Do not say that sentence again. Not in my carriage, not in my kingdom, not ever." She looked up. He was not looking at her face. He was looking at her ankle, at the ring of old silver pale scars circling it where iron shackles had rested for years of her childhood, put there by Ingrid to, Keep the runt from wandering. Elmira had forgotten. In her panic, that the cloak would ride up. She had forgotten the scars were visible. Elmira's jaw worked. A muscle jumped beneath the dark stubble. When he spoke, his voice had dropped half an octave, and the carriage seemed to vibrate with it. Who put these on you? It doesn't matter. My king. It was a long time. A long time ago. Who? The word was a growl now, low and splintering, and she felt it in her sternum, felt it behind her eyes, felt it in the empty hollow where her wolf should have been, and for one strange, impossible second, the hollow answered. A single quiet pulse, like a bell struck underwater. She gasped. Elmira's eyes snapped to hers. He had felt it too. She saw it in the minute widening of his pupils, the sudden stillness of his chest. What was that? She whispered. He did not answer. He set her foot down with terrible gentleness, drew a fur from the wall, and wrapped it around her legs himself. His hands were trembling. His hands, the Alpha King's hands, were trembling, and he was trying very hard to hide it. Sleep, he said roughly. We ride through the night. You will need your strength for what comes next. What comes next? He looked out the frosted window. The torchlight of the courtyard was long gone. Only the blizzard remained, white and endless and screaming past the glass. Judgment, he said. Yours and theirs. She did not understand what he meant. She was too tired to ask. The furs were warm, and the brazier glowed, and the carriage rocked like a cradle. And for the first time in 15 winters, Elmira Gaier slept without listening for footsteps outside her door. She did not see Elmira watching her the entire night. She did not see him press his thumb, very carefully, against the silver scars on her ankle and close his eyes as if in prayer. She woke to the smell of pine. Not the rotted pine of Ingrid's woodshed, where she had slept for 11 of her 19 years. Real pine, living, resinous, warmed by a hearth fire somewhere nearby. For one long golden moment, Elmira lay inside the scent and believed she was still dreaming. Then she remembered. She sat up so fast, the furs slid from her shoulders. And the room, her room, apparently swam into focus. A 4-poster bed the size of her stepmother's entire kitchen. Stone walls hung with tapestries of running wolves. A window of true glass, not oiled parchment, looking out onto a valley of white fir forest so vast it bent the horizon. And on a chair beside the bed, folded with surgical neatness, a gown of deep wolf-gray silk. No Elmira, no servants, just her, and the gown, and the stillness. Run. The thought rose in her chest before she could stop it. Hot and animal. He'll tire of you by nightfall. Ingrid said so. Men like him always do. Run while the castle still doesn't know your face. Her bare feet hit the stone. The scars on her ankles burned with the cold. She crossed to the window. No bars, no lock, just a latch. And the latch opened beneath her fingers like it had been waiting for her. 15 feet down, a thatched roof. 10 feet from that, a servant's yard. 20 feet from that, the tree line. She had climbed worse. She did not reach for the silk gown. Silk would catch. She tore a strip from the fur coverlet, bound her hair back, and swung a leg over the sill. Little wolf, said a voice from the doorway, if you jump, you will break both ankles, and I will have to carry you back up, and neither of us will enjoy that conversation. She froze. Elmira stood in the arch of the door. He had changed from the furs of last night into a simple black tunic. Sleeves rolled to the elbow, and his forearms were marked with old silver scars of his own. Long, ritual lines running from wrist to inner elbow. He was not armed. He was not angry. He was only watching her the way he had watched her in the carriage, but with that same unbearable patience. I wasn't. I was only looking. You were running. He did not move from the doorway. I do not blame you. If I had lived your 19 years, I would be running too. He knew her age. He had known her name. The cold crept back into her fingers. How do you know me? My king. We've never met. Something flickered across his face. Grief. Maybe. Or the memory of grief. Come down from the window, Elmira. Please. The please did it. She had never heard the word spoken to her. Not once. Not by anyone. It was the strangest sound of the world. She climbed back inside on legs that had gone suddenly liquid, and he crossed the room and wrapped a fur around her shoulders without touching her skin, and gestured to a small table she had not noticed. Bread, honey, a cup of something steaming. Real food. Eat, he said. Then we will speak of what I brought you here to do. She sat. She ate. She tried not to weep at the taste of honey. He sat across from her, and for a long time he only watched her eat, and the ache in her hollow chest pulsed once, twice, a bell underwater, a heartbeat not her own. There is a ritual, he said at last. On the night of the full ice moon. 4 days from now. Every new mate must be presented to the pack in the Hall of Stones. She must kneel. She must bare her throat. She must accept the alpha's bite before the full assembled lords. Her bread turned to ash in her mouth. I can't. My king, I'm scentless. I have no wolf. I can't shift. They'll tear me. Tear me apart. They will not tear you apart. His voice was iron. I will be there, and you will not be alone. But the bite only takes if the bond is real. If there's a wolf inside to answer, and I don't have one. Everyone knows I don't have one. He was silent for a long moment. Then, trust me, and here was the mistake. Because she looked at the scars on his wrists, and the honey on her plate, and the window she had almost jumped from, and she thought of Ingrid's face in the torchlight. And she thought of Brielle's O of disbelief, and she thought that perhaps for once in her miserable life, she had been chosen for a reason. She did not ask him, why me? She did not ask him, what are you hiding? She did not ask him about the pulse in her chest, or the silver on his wrists, or why a king who had not attended an auction in 40 years had ridden through a blizzard to claim a scentless girl. And here, dear listener, I have to pause, because I have watched 100 women I love make this exact mistake. Not the mistake of trusting, the mistake of trusting without asking the question that scares them. We tell ourselves that asking, why me, will make the good thing disappear. So we swallow the question, and later, always later, we pay for the silence with interest. Elmira is about to learn this. Most of us already have. She only nodded. Yes, my king, I trust you. And across the table, Elmira Vornheim closed his eyes for one brief second, like a man who had just heard a verdict he both prayed for and dreaded, and whispered something under his breath she was not meant to hear. Forgive me, little wolf, for what I'm about to let them do. The full ice moon rose blood silver over the Vornheim peaks. 4 days had passed in a blur of fittings, and tutors, and long, quiet meals where Elmira watched her across the table and said things that were almost questions but never quite. Do you remember the wolf lullaby your mother sang? Do you remember the scar beneath your left shoulder blade? Do you remember the name Seraphine? She had answered no to all of them, and each no made the muscle in his jaw jump, and each no made the hollow in her chest pulse a little harder, a little closer to the surface. Tonight she wore white, not gray, white, the color of a sacrifice. 17 handmaidens had braided her copper hair with silver wire. They had painted the soles of her feet with indigo. They had hung a single chain of moon silver around her throat. Cold, impossibly cold, so cold it felt like a second collar, and told her not to touch it. Not once. Not for any reason. Until the alpha's teeth broke her skin. She walked the long stone corridor toward the hall of stones with 2 handmaidens at each elbow. "Trust me," he had said. She was trying. Gods, she was trying. The great oak doors opened, and the hall swallowed her whole. 600 wolves of the northern lords stood in 2 facing rows, torchlight guttering off their ceremonial furs, their eyes gleaming amber and green and gold in the dark. The aisle between them stretched 100 paces to a raised dais of black stone. On the dais stood Elmira, shirtless, his ritual scars darkened with oil, the obsidian crown catching the moonlight from the open roof above. And on the dais behind him, stood Ingrid, and Brielle, and the auctioneer, and 12 of the Gaier retainers who had whipped her as a child. Her steps faltered. No, he wouldn't. He promised. Elmira's eyes found hers across the hall, and in them she saw something terrible and something tender. And she understood, suddenly and completely, that he had promised, and he was keeping the promise, but not in the way she had thought. She kept walking. She had no choice. The handmaiden's hands were firm on her elbows. She reached the dais, she climbed the 3 black steps, she knelt, as she had been taught, on the circle of salt at Elmira's feet, and she bared her throat to the moon, and the silver chain against her skin burned like a brand. "Tonight," Elmira said, and his voice carried to every stone of the hall, "I claim this woman before the ice moon, before the northern packs, before the gods of tooth and frost. Let any who object speak, now, or be forever silent." Ingrid stepped forward. Elmira's whole body seized. "My king!" Ingrid's voice was honey and poison. "Forgive me, but the girl is scentless. Wolfless. She cannot receive the bite. The ritual will fail, and the pack will be cursed for 7 winters. I beg you, choose my Brielle instead." A ripple went through the hall. Some of the lords nodded, some murmured. A few bared teeth. Elmira did not look at Ingrid. He looked down at Elmira, kneeling on the salt, the silver chain searing her throat. "Lady Ingrid Gaier," he said softly, "tell the hall how you know the girl is scentless." Ingrid's smile flickered. She has never shifted. My king. Not once in 19 years. Everyone in House Gaier knows. Everyone in House Gaier, Elmira said, knows only what you told them. The hall went very still. Elmira crouched. He took the silver chain at Elmira's throat between his finger and thumb. His touch was careful. His eyes did not leave hers. "Little wolf," he murmured, low enough for only her to hear. "This chain is moon silver, forged in the old way. It suppresses a wolf so completely that even its own bearer cannot feel it. Your mother wore one just like it, the night she died. Your stepmother," his eyes flicked up, "put this one around your neck when you were 4 years old. It has been hidden beneath every collar, every rag, every scarf, every strand of your hair for 15 winters." "What?" she breathed. "What are you—" "I'm saying," he whispered, "that you are not scentless. You never were." And he snapped the chain. The sound it made was not metal breaking. It was a howl, high and furious and grieving, torn from somewhere beneath the floor of the world, and it hit Elmira in the chest like a battering ram. The hollow opened. The hollow was not a hollow. The hollow was a door, and something on the other side had been waiting, and now it was coming through, and the hall of stones filled with a scent that was not a scent but a memory, white fire and wild iris, and the blood of old kings, and every wolf in the hall dropped to its knees, because no wolf that had lived could smell that scent and remain standing. Ingrid's face went white. "No," the stepmother whispered. "No, she's dead. Seraphine's line is dead. I saw to it. She realized what she had said half a second too late. 600 wolves turned their heads toward her in perfect, terrible unison. And Elmira, kneeling on the salt. Silver chain falling in pieces around her, the scent of her true bloodline rising off her skin in visible white steam. Lifted her head and looked at her stepmother for what she understood. Finally, was the very first time the hall did not roar and did something worse. It listened. 600 wolves had gone to their knees, and 600 wolves now breathed a scent none of them had smelled in 140 years, the scent of Seraphine Morgan, last White Queen of the Iris line, whose throat had been cut on the steps of her own pack hall when Elmira was 4 years old, and whose child had vanished that same night into the snow and been presumed dead ever since. Elmira could not stand. Her legs had forgotten how... The scent was pouring off her. She could see it. Pale steam rising from her forearms, from the hollow of her throat, from the indigo soles of her feet. And with each breath, the memories came faster, came sharper, came home. A woman's voice, singing a lullaby in the old tongue, warm hands braiding her hair by firelight, a silver chain being looped around a 4-year-old's neck by a woman she had called Auntie, while her mother lay bleeding on the stones 3 rooms away. This will keep you safe, little Iris. This will keep them from finding you. You must never, ever take it off. Ingrid had put the chain on her. Ingrid had taken her from the slaughter. Not to save her, but to own her. A queen's daughter, muzzled and scentless, raised as a servant in the murderer's own house, a trophy too dangerous to kill outright, too valuable to let die. You, Elmira whispered. Her voice did not shake now. Something else was holding it steady. Something that had been waiting 15 winters for this exact breath. You killed my mother. Ingrid's mouth opened. No sound came out. Elmira moved. He did not touch Elmira. He stepped in front of her, 1 pace, and turned to face the hall. And when he spoke, his voice was no longer the voice of a king speaking to his court. It was the voice of an alpha who had just been handed a very old knife and had every intention of using it. Lords of the North. The words were quiet. The hall heard everyone. 40 years ago, the Iris line was butchered on the order of a coward who called herself kin. The White Queen's daughter was hidden beneath a silver chain and sold 3 winters ago as a scentless runt at the Gaier table. I have known this since the frost of last autumn, when a trader pulled a single copper hair from a woodshed in the Gaier holdings and brought it to my spy master. I have known, and I have waited. He turned his head, just slightly, just enough. I waited. For tonight. The hall understood, all at once, that it had not come to witness a mating. It had come to witness a trial. Not my king. Ingrid found her voice. It was high and cracking. My king. Whatever the girl has told you, whatever lies, she has told me nothing. Elmira did not raise his voice. You told me. 3 breaths ago, in front of 600 witnesses, you said Seraphine's line is dead. I saw to it. Ingrid's face collapsed. Behind her, Brielle backed up 1 step, then another. Her oiled curls had gone dull in the moonlight. The auctioneer had already sunk to his knees and was weeping openly into his sleeve. The girl, Ingrid stammered. The girl she was going to be. I was going to reveal her. My king, I swear it. I was raising her for this moment. You were raising her, Elmira said. In a woodshed, in chains. He lifted his hand. The 12 Gaier retainers on the dais, the ones who had whipped Elmira, starved her, locked her in the dark, were seized from behind by Vornheim guards who had been standing so silently among them that none had noticed the black furs mixed into the gray. Lady Ingrid Gaier, Elmira's voice rose. Now, for the benefit of the hall, you are charged with the murder of Queen Seraphine Morgan of the Iris line, the abduction and enslavement of her heir, and the suppression of a royal wolf by Moonsilver across 15 winters. How do you plead? She, she was, she was only a runt, my king. She was nothing. She was, how do you plead? Guilty? Ingrid breathed. And then, because something inside her had broken and the worst of her was pouring out of the crack, guilty. Yes, guilty. And I would do it again. You fool, you don't understand what she is, what her mother was. The Iris line would have swallowed the North. I saved you. Elmira was no longer listening. He had turned back to Elmira. She was still on her knees in the salt circle. The white steam had thinned. The scent was banking down to something quieter, something only the wolves nearest her could catch. Her copper hair had come loose from the silver wire and hung around her shoulders like a banner. Her eyes, which had been flat gray for 19 winters, had changed. They were the color of wild iris now, pale violet, ringed in gold. She looked up at him. Her hand rose, on its own, toward the place where the chain had been. Her fingers found only bare, unmarked skin. My king, she whispered. I can feel her. My wolf. She's crying. She's been crying for so long. Elmira knelt in front of her. In front of 600 wolves. In front of the woman who had murdered her mother. The Alpha King of the North knelt and took the Iris heir's hand and pressed it against his own bare chest above his heart. Then let her cry, little queen, he said softly. And then let her wake. And when she wakes, his voice dropped, and the hall dropped with it. We will decide together what is to be done with your stepmother. I want to stop the story here for one breath, because this is the moment I rewrote 11 times. The easy ending is teeth. The satisfying ending is teeth. Every draft I wrote with teeth felt good for about 10 minutes and hollow for a week. I kept asking myself, what does a person who was caged for 15 winters actually want once the cage is open? And the honest answer, the one I finally believed, is that they don't want to become the thing that caged them. They want to become unrecognizable to it. Watch what Elmira chooses next. I think she's wiser than I was at her age. The wolf came up through her like a sunrise. Elmira felt it begin in the small of her back, a warmth that unfurled and kept unfurling and did not stop. Her spine lengthened, her shoulders opened. Something that had been folded very, very small inside her for 15 winters took one slow, enormous breath and uncurled. She did not shift. Not yet. The wolf was too young, too newly woken to take the body. But she stood, and when she stood differently. Her weight settled through her heels. Her chin lifted without being told to. The white silk of her ceremonial gown fell around her like a mantle, and the indigo on her soles left perfect prints on the black stone. The 600 wolves of the northern lords understood what they were seeing half a heartbeat before their minds caught up. The understanding moved through the hall like wind across wheat. 1 by 1, then 10 by 10, then 50 by 50. They went down. Not to their knees. They had already been kneeling. They pressed their foreheads to the floor, to a daughter of the Iris line, to a queen twice born, once in blood, once in moon silver breaking. Elmira barely saw them. She was looking at Ingrid. You put me in the woodshed, she said. Her voice was soft. It carried to every corner of the hall. You broke my fingers like when I was 7. You said I stole bread. You let Brielle. You let her cut my hair. The night of her naming day, and you laughed. You laughed. Ingrid was weeping now, ugly, open weeping. It did not move Elmira at all. She noticed this with a distant sort of wonder. I'm not crying. I thought I would cry. I have nothing to give her, not even that. And my mother. You killed my mother, in her own hall, on on her own stones, while she was unarmed. She was a tyrant. Ingrid spat, and the weeping was gone now, burned off by something older and blacker. Your mother was a tyrant, child. She would have made the North into a kennel for her Iris breed. I did what no lord of the North had the spine to do, and if you had any sense, you would thank me. You would thank me that I let you live. Silence. Elmira's voice broke over the hall like a hammer on ice. Every lord flinched. Ingrid's mouth snapped shut mid-word. Not by choice. Elmira felt the Alpha's command ripple past her, felt it not touch her, felt her own newborn wolf rise up inside her ribs and meet it as an equal, and understood, with a small electric jolt, what she was to him, what she had always been to him, her mate. Not because he had chosen her at an auction, because the bond between Alpha King and Iris Queen was older than the crown on his head, older than the stones of this hall, older than the grudge that had murdered her mother. He had not come to the auction to pick a bride. He had come to retrieve his own. She turned her head. He was watching her. His face was open in a way she suspected almost no one had ever seen it. He was waiting. Waiting to see what she would do with the woman who had destroyed her life. The old Elmira, the woodshed Elmira, the barefoot Elmira, the please let it be quick. Elmira would have screamed for blood, would have asked for teeth, would have begged Elmira to tear Ingrid's throat out in front of the hall and let her drink from the wound. The new Elmira looked at Ingrid, really looked, and saw, for the first time, how small her stepmother was, how thin the bones of her wrists, how gray the roots of her dyed black hair, how much of Ingrid's power had only ever been Elmira's own, sealed away beneath a silver collar and reflected back at her as terror. No, Elmira said quietly. The hall stirred. Not teeth. Not death. That is too clean for her. She stepped down from the dais. She walked, barefoot, across the salt circle, across the black stone, until she stood one pace from the woman who had raised her on bread crusts and blows. Ingrid flinched. Elmira did not. You will go back to the Gaier holdings. Her voice was steady. It was the voice of a woman who had been practicing in the dark of a woodshed for 15 winters without knowing it. You will not keep the name. You will not keep the house. You will serve in the kitchens under the woman you used to beat for burning bread. Her name is Mara. She is kind. She will not beat you. That will be worse for you than any beating. Ingrid's mouth opened. No sound came. You will wear a chain. Elmira went on, softer. Of common iron. Around your throat, where everyone can see it. For every year of your life that remains, and on the day you die, it will be buried with you. And the Iris line will forget your name. She turned away. Take her. The Vornheim guards took her. Ingrid did not scream. She had no scream left. Brielle collapsed weeping beside the auctioneer, and neither was touched. Elmira had not named them, and no wolf in the hall moved without her word now. Elmira had come down from the dais. He was standing behind her, close, but not touching, waiting, still, for her to choose. Elmira turned to face him. Her eyes, violet, gold-ringed, open, at last, met his. My king, she said, and then, softer, wondering at the shape of it in her mouth. My mate, As Elmira Vornheim, Alpha of the North, who had knelt only twice in 40 years, once at his father's pyre, and once tonight for her, drew one long breath, as if he had been holding it since the blizzard in the Gaier courtyard. And he opened his arms. She walked into them. The hall. At last, began to weep. They did not finish the ritual that night. Elmira would not let them. Her wolf is 4 hours old, he told the lords, low and final, and she has been a queen for 40 minutes. The bite will wait. The hall bowed and emptied and left them alone in the stone dark. And he carried her. She let him, though her legs worked well enough now, up the long spiral stair to the tower room where the wolf queens of old had always slept. He set her down on the furs of the old bed. He did not climb in after her. He sat on the floor, his back against the foot of the bed, his great shoulders at the level of her knees, and he let her put her hand in his hair. She did, slowly, like a woman learning a language. You knew, she said. Not an accusation. A mapping. From the first. From the courtyard. You knew. From last autumn, he said. A trader brought me a hair. I had it tested against a lock your mother had given my father in peace 30 years ago. They matched. I could have come for you in autumn. I did not. Why? Because if I had ridden into the Gaier holdings and taken you, Ingrid would have claimed I stole a ward of her house. The North would have split on the question. There would have been war, and war is a clumsy knife. The mating auction was Gaier law, old law, binding law. If I bought you there, in front of 600 witnesses, she could not contest the claim. She had to put you on the block herself. His voice, very low. I am sorry. For the cold? For the apple? For what they called you? I could not send a single sign. If she had guessed I knew, she would have killed you before I reached the gate. Elmira was quiet for a long time, her fingers moving in his hair. And the auction, she said at last. You let them. You let them bid first. You let them. Let them call me. Call me scentless. In front of everyone. Yes. His voice was rough. I needed every wolf in the North to hear it said. So that when the chain broke tonight, every wolf in the North would understand exactly what had been done to you. And to whom. She considered this. That is a long game, my king. I am a patient man. Little queen. A laugh escaped her. It surprised them both. She felt it leave her mouth like a bird she had been keeping in a box. Then, quieter. You knelt in front of everyone? Yes. Why? He tilted his head back against the bed frame. He looked up at her, upside down Varden, from her knees, and his wolf-gray eyes were very soft. Because you had been on your knees for 15 winters, he said. And someone owed you the view from above. Her breath caught, the hollow in her chest, which was not a hollow anymore, which was a whole room now, warm and lit and full of a wolf who was finally breathing, filled with something she did not have a name for, something that was not gratitude, something that was not even love, not yet, something older, something like recognition. Come up here, she whispered. He came up. He did not touch her the way the carriage had implied he would. He lay down beside her, above the furs, fully clothed, and let her tuck her face into the hollow of his throat where the cedar and iron scent was strongest. He put one enormous hand on the back of her head and held it there, as if he were afraid she might dissolve. Her wolf, new and shy, nosed up through her ribs and pressed her muzzle against his. Somewhere deep beneath Elmira's sternum, a second heartbeat that had been missing for 15 winters fell into step with Elmira's own. The bite, she murmured, already half asleep. When will we? When you are ready, he said, not one breath before. And if I'm never, then never, his mouth against her hair. I did not ride through a blizzard for a bite. Elmira Morgan, I rode for you. She slept. When she woke, it was dawn, and there was a tray on the table, bread, honey, a cup of something steaming, and Elmira was sitting beside it, rolling a small object between his thumb and forefinger, a fragment of the moon-silver chain, the piece he had snapped from her throat. He was not looking at it the way a man looks at a trophy. He was looking at it the way a man looks at a wound. I'm going to have this melted down, he said without turning, and reforged. As a ring, if you will wear one. A ring. A mating ring. Iris and iron? Old pattern? The silver will not suppress you. The spellwork dies with the break. It will only remember what was done to you, so that when the North sees it, the North will never forget. She crossed the room. She sat on the table beside the tray. She held out her left hand. Yes, she said. Reforge it. And when the ring is ready. Yes, I will be ready. He took her hand. He pressed his mouth to the center of her palm. Not her knuckles, her palm. Like a man swearing on a text. Then we will have 2 weddings. Little queen. One at the full thaw for the pack, and one. First, his gray eyes lifted to hers, just for us. In the forest. No witnesses but the wolves. The wolves will witness enough for 6. For 600, she whispered. Yes, and he said, they will. Outside the tower window, somewhere in the valley below, a single wolf began to howl. A moment later, another answered. Then a third. Then the whole forest, from the fir line to the frozen river, took up the cry, low and long and joyful. The sound 100 packs make when a queen they had given up on has come home. Outside the tower window, somewhere in the valley below, a single wolf began to howl. A moment later, another answered. Then a third. Then the whole forest, from the fir line to the frozen river, took up the cry, low and long and joyful. The sound 100 packs make when a queen they had given up on has come home. Elmira Morrigan, last of the Iris line, set her forehead against Elmira Vornheim's and wept for the first time in 15 winters. He caught every tear in the cup of his hand like they were something rare. Because they were. And here's the thing I want you to take from this chapter. If you take nothing else, the people who truly love you do not ask you to perform your healing on their schedule. Elmira did not demand the bite the moment he could have taken it. He waited. He sat on the floor at the foot of her bed. He let a 4-hour-old wolf decide when she was ready. Real love is not the grand claim. It is the patience between the claim and the consummation. If someone in your life cannot sit on the floor and wait for you, dear listener, they have not earned the bed. Elmira Morrigan, last of the Iris line, set her forehead against Elmira Vornheim's and wept for the first time in 15 winters. He caught every tear in the cup of his hand like they were something rare, because they were. Spring came late to the Vornheim peaks that year, but it came. The ice on the Great River cracked on a Tuesday at dawn, and by Thursday the valley below the castle was a riot of wild iris, pale violet, gold at the throat. The flower no one in the north had seen bloom in a generation. They pushed up through the last of the snow in ragged, stubborn crowds, as if they had been waiting underground for someone to come home and tell them it was safe. Elmira walked among them barefoot, the iron and iris ring warm on her left hand. Her hair was longer now. She had stopped cutting it. Her wolf, a slim, white-coated creature with pale violet eyes, ran a little ahead of her, nose deep in the flowers, sneezing when the pollen caught her. Elmira walked at Elmira's shoulder, an easy hand at the small of her back, and said nothing, because there was nothing that needed saying. They had been wed in the forest 3 weeks after the ice moon, with no witnesses but a black stag and a circle of wolves. They would be wed again, in the pack hall, at the midsummer full moon, in front of every lord of the north and every queen of the allied packs. Elmira had commissioned a crown for her of twisted silver iris. She had laughed when she saw it and told him it was too heavy. And he had said good. It will remind you to keep your chin up. And she had not stopped smiling for the rest of that afternoon. In a kitchen 3 valleys away, a woman named Mara set a loaf of bread in front of a kitchen servant with gray roots and thin wrists and an iron chain around her throat, and said, kindly, eat before it's cold. The servant ate. She ate every day. She would eat every day for the rest of her life, and no one would ever strike her. And this was, in the end, the cruelest thing Elmira Morrigan could have done to her, to let her live and be fed and be forgotten. Elmira Gaier had married a minor lord of the Eastern Marches and was, by all reports, furiously, aggressively happy. Elmira had sent her a wedding gift of wild iris, unsigned. She hoped Brielle had understood. The auctioneer had taken holy orders and no longer spoke. People sometimes write to me angry that Elmira didn't kill her stepmother. I understand the anger. I felt it too, holding the pen. But I have lived long enough to know that revenge and justice are not the same shape. Revenge is a fire. It warms you for a night and burns down your house by morning. Justice is colder and quieter and harder to swallow because it asks you to keep living afterward. Elmira chose to keep living. She chose a life full of iris fields and a husband who waits and a small white wolf who sneezes in the pollen. Instead of a life full of the memory of her stepmother's blood on her hands, I think she chose right. I hope, when your day comes, you'll have the courage to choose the same. Back in the iris field. Elmira stopped walking. She turned to Elmira. She put both hands flat against his chest, over the old ritual scars, over the heart that had waited 15 winters for her without knowing her name, and she tilted her face up into the spring sun. "Say it again," she whispered. The thing. You said in the tower, the first night." He knew which thing. He always knew. "You had been on your knees for 15 winters," he murmured. "And someone owed you the view from above." She smiled, slow and whole. "Thank you, my king. Thank you, my queen." Somewhere in the iris field, a small white wolf sneezed. And the north, for the first time in 40 years, was at peace. That's where I'll leave you tonight, in the iris field with the snow melting under bare feet. I want to tell you what I learned writing this story, because the lesson surprised me. I sat down, meaning to write a revenge tale. I ended up writing about a woman who realized her stepmother's worst punishment was simply being forced to live in a world where Elmira had won. Sometimes the best answer to the people who tried to make you small is to grow, quietly, fully, and in front of them. Now I want to hear from you. Did Elmira show real mercy? Or was the iron collar a crueler verdict than teeth would have been? There is no wrong answer, only the answer that tells you something about yourself. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and I'll be picking 3 to feature in next week's story. If this one stayed with you, subscribe and ring the bell, not for the algorithm, but because I'm building this channel one story at a time. And your company is what makes it worth telling. Take care of yourselves out there. The next blizzard is already rising. I'll see you on the other side of it.